Hello and welcome everyone in Conversations at the Crossroads. And today we have a very special guest, a very dear friend, a mentor, a guide, and so much more. And she's been miles apart but connected with heart. So let me share something before we begin. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Learn to do things on your own. Expose yourself to the world out there. Do not hesitate to put yourself in unfamiliar situations and surroundings. Only then you will grow. We have heard it a lot of time. But why do people say that? Each time you learn something new, your brain activity is enhanced. New neural connections are formed, and this phenomenon is known as brain plasticity. And that is the reason why we need to expand our comfort zone. Also, remember, when you cultivate the attitude of gratitude, it helps you to see positives in life. And we all know the law of attraction says the more positive things that you see in your life, the more beneficial it is, and you will attract more and more positives. And that's exactly what our today's guest believed in. She challenged the unfamiliar situations. She expanded her comfort zone. And she, with a lot of gratitude, started a community of LinkedIn Local. Hello, everyone. So, when we talk about a community, it takes a lot because a community is about giving first. Getting doesn't be there. There's no expectation. The community has to grow, and that's what she began with. A community curator, a LinkedIn educator, and a storyteller. She has driven to help individuals and businesses to build better and more authentic connections in the digital world. She's the co-founder of LinkedIn Local Community, an initiative that went from connect online to meeting offline in the real life. And that spread to 90 plus countries in just 22 months. And the wave also touched India and a lot of us. Anna also empowered entrepreneurs, brands to look and create and scale their own communities. She's a powerhouse when it comes to building communities and helping businesses. She has a unique background in social media recruitment and is an accomplished LinkedIn trainer and a speaker. So put your hands together and let's welcome Anna McAfee. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Saga. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and on someone else's live for a change.
No, it's always a pleasure to have you, Anna, and it's so much good to see you live talking. And whenever we talk about Anna McAfee, two things come to my mind. One is LinkedIn Local, and second is the fantastic core values that you taught us. People are worth meeting, stories are worth sharing, connection and not collaboration.
Collaboration, not competition.
Yes, collaboration and not competition. So, how did that thought came to your mind? What was your thought behind LinkedIn Local? Wow.
Look, the beginning of LinkedIn Local was I was very disconnected from, just in a situation where, I was just coming out from maternity leave. I was connecting a lot online, and I'd been to a few business networking events that just didn't fit for me. I arrived, I felt very unwelcomed. I didn't really get to talk to a lot of people. I felt very salesy, and it just didn't really fit for me. And I was having all these really interesting conversations online. So on a message thread one day with one of my connections, which is actually coming up to, it would be 4 years. We're almost at the 4-year anniversary. So we said, well, if there's so many of us we had a low local engagement in the city I'm in Coffs Harbour in Australia, and so we put out, we just said, well, if there's so few of us, why don't we all just get together for a coffee one day? So I put up a post on LinkedIn the following week that said, I'm going to host a local meetup of LinkedIn connections. The purpose is to take our connections, our online connections, offline and get to know the people behind the LinkedIn profiles. And it was really just that simple. And I put a hashtag on it as very much an afterthought and thought, oh, well, hashtags encourage participation, don't they? And within an hour, we had Alexandra Galvez in London who said, I'm going to start one. And Eric Eklund in Brussels did the same. And Swish Goswami, I think it was a week or two later, had said he was going to host one in New York. So we started with 4 people in 4 cities. And fast forward 2 years, we were 96 countries in 850 cities. It was just vast, absolutely vast and mind-boggling.
Yeah. And I remember, having that 40-minute call with you right early in the morning, and you had like back-to-back calls for, briefing all the hosts that are coming up, giving them the value, giving them the heart and soul of LinkedIn Local. And moreover, for all our guests to know, there's something which has made a difference in so many lives. And that has also been put into a book. And that book has been written by Anna McAfee and Nicole. And that book is right here on your screen. You can check it right here, right now. And that is how a hashtag changed the world. Now, we talk about hashtags, and we know that there are so many hashtags. But Anna, you created a revolution. So share something about the book.
Look, the idea of the book began quite early. Nicole and I talked about a year in, just about the story of building this. We thought was just so interesting. I mean, people were so interested by it and would really react to content around it. So the seed had been planted very early. And when we stepped away as kind of leaders of the movement, when LinkedIn stepped in with their terms, I had another thought, which was there are so many stories of impact from this movement. My inbox is just full of people who've messaged me and said, this has completely transformed my life in some way. And so Nicole and I had another conversation about the book again, and I said, these stories can't disappear. They can't just sit in my inbox. They need to be told. So the book is really how we built the movement, as well as a collection of stories from, hi Mansi, a collection of stories from around the world. So from all corners of the globe, there are stories from people whose lives were impacted in some way. Some of them are hosts like yourself, Sakar and Mansi, and some of them were guests, so people who had actually been to an event, they were involved in organising it. And there are just so many stories that aren't in the book. We obviously could only include a handful of them. But so, yeah, it's a collection of stories. It's really human stories about connection and about, the impact of LinkedIn on our lives and what happens when we take those online connections offline.
Yep, absolutely. And those connections actually have changed my life, impacted my life, and I'm a living evidence of how LinkedIn Local can impact people. And, LinkedIn Local also gave me a nudge to even connect to an orphanage who was in local. And we were actually able to take care of 40 kids. I mean, I never imagined of getting that far because the community had so much power that it just happened. So thanks to everyone, all the founders and the thought behind the community and LinkedIn Local, and the amazing journey that we all had been together. So now, Anna, coming to the discussion, what has been, or what does Crossroad mean to you?
Look, Crossroads to me really means a decision of to do one thing or the other, or just at a point where you don't, you need to make some kind of decision. And maybe it's not about going one direction or the other. Perhaps it's a values question. Perhaps it's, facing something, some sort of personal or professional trauma in your life or something. So it's about really that thought. To me, Crossroads really is that thought process on what am I going to do next.
Wow, that's a wonderful definition. Crossroads to you means what are you to do next? So instead of why me and keep crying, what
Mm.
next? Bring it on. Lovely. That was the golden nugget. And that's a wonderful answer to understand what crossroad means to all of us in our life. We all will have several crossroads in our life. But just like Anna said, don't say why me. Rather, choose and say what next. Bring it on, and I'm there. Brilliant, Anna. So moving on to, a more personal conversation now, I would request you to share one story, one journey, or one part of your life when you were at crossroads, and how did it all begin? What did you do, and where are you now in that journey of your life?
Look, I think I'll share a personal story that I haven't really spoken about much, which was just I went to university in Australia, and we have 4 years of university, or at least the degree I did. And at the very beginning of that fourth year is when most people apply for graduate positions. You probably call them internships, and really going down that path of a very corporate employment. And I faced a crossroads where I just knew it wasn't for me. I just knew that I had not spent my time at, during my summers in internships. I was far more interested in traveling. And even what I studied, which was psychology and business management, I even really wasn't sure whether my career was down that path either. And so I took the decision at that point to not actually apply for any roles, and that I was just going to go traveling. So that was what I did when I finished university. I went overseas. I was in the US, in Colorado. I did a ski season there. I traveled around Europe for a couple of months, and then ended up in the UK, and specifically in Scotland, where I ended up staying for 9 years, which had a huge impact for me because that was where I went into recruitment. That was inevitably what led me to LinkedIn. It was where I met my husband, and obviously I'm now back in Australia. But that crossroads for me was just at that point of knowing that the path that everybody else was taking, just because professionally I didn't feel so aligned to be going into a corporate world, as well as not really even in the field that I was in. So the field that I was studying, sorry. So yeah, that path took a bit of courage to up and leave and move to the other side of the world. It's a big task, and many have done it, probably not so much in the last year, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a big crossroads part of my journey, was really taking that step to push past what everybody else was doing, and go and do something different, which was in my heart, which is to travel and see the world.
Okay. So while you were on that journey, or while you were, in that state, have you faced fear, anxiety? Did you feel at a point where, what if I can't deliver what I've thought of?
Absolutely. I mean, you can easily fall. I mean, there was a question, well, am I going to get a job, and am I going to have enough money to continue this journey? And, what happens if I get into trouble, or something happens? I mean, it's fear in everything, and particularly but I think when you're young, you're a little less, you are more courageous, put it that way. I can think of all the reasons not to do it now, but at the time I could only really think of all the positive reasons that I should do it. So yeah, but absolutely there was fear. And I also think just not knowing anyone, that's a really big part of, how are you going to meet people, and how are you going to build that tribe of people around you, or rebuild that tribe of the people that you have shared so much with, and who've supported you. And it's about leaving that real comfort zone and going and finding a new community to live in. So
Brilliant.
yeah, here's a big part, um, but I think what was on the other side was there was a lot more opportunity on the other side. So it was really about making a decision and going forward.
Absolutely. So you shared a very good point here that while we are young, the chances of we having fear is less, but as we grow old, I'll rephrase it to saying that when we are young, we are independent, we are carefree, and not many people are dependent on us. But when we grow, and when we have dependence on us, or when we have people who are actually relying on us, we start kind of having that fear, what if? And that is something which we all can learn, that no matter what happens in life, we need to overcome that fear, overcome that path. And as you rightly said, it's about taking that decision, looking at the end of the tunnel, looking at the opportunities that are there, and take a step forward. Brilliant. I mean, that was a very, very, very summarized thing that you shared with us, and such a personal thing. So really, really nice. I'm sure you all already would have felt the same crossroads when we got information that LinkedIn Local is now being taken over to a bigger platform, and LinkedIn Local was going open to all, and no controls or something of that sort. So were you feeling at the crossroads in that point, or how was your feeling when that happened?
Look, I was at a crossroads for many months before that. We had been waiting for an answer from LinkedIn for a really long time. It was around October. Had been our last community. We had a lot of communication with LinkedIn in the second year of, I guess, my tenure, and during that second year we had a lot of. But it was the October was our last conversation, and I had sent them a note around about how we felt that they could support the community, and specifically the hosts. Interestingly, I'm actually about to publish that email this week, so get on my newsletter, because I'll be sharing that, because I have promised to publish it for someone, and I think it's really important for user communities across the world to kind of understand how you reward hosts in non-monetary ways. And how you support user communities. But so yeah, there was a crossroads really up until that. And LinkedIn Local was a monster. It was a very fun and happy connecting monster, but it really was a monster. And we just had no resources. So we were at a crossroads in the months leading up to those terms. And when they got issued in March, and I had no communication between October and March from LinkedIn at all, when we actually got those terms, I felt like a door had closed, and I'll be honest, there was a sense of relief, because I thought I was really burnt out at that point. I was really struggling to cope with this demand, and the website was barely hanging on by a thread. We built it in a weekend. It was just completely, everything, we were like, oh, this thing's breaking, because we just had so much traffic to the site. We had so many host requests. It was like, our calls were booked 30 days out, and people were getting up in the middle of the night to attend these host calls, and everybody wanted a piece of it. And so I guess it was a decision that was made for me. Whether or not it was the right one, I still have a sense that LinkedIn could have done more. They could, well, of
Yes.
course they could have. I think we can all say that.
Absolutely.
It wasn't for them at the time. They had done their own internal process, and didn't feel the need for a community like that within the organisation. It's interesting now that they are hiring. Well, they have hired a head of community. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes in the future. Whether I still think LinkedIn Local will probably remain as is. So to answer your question, yeah, something had to change, and LinkedIn removing the values, removing the core values, and essentially the purpose of what our community was.
Yes.
yeah, it was quite a tragic experience to go through. I hope no brands ever do it to a user community again. But yeah, it happened, and I think the Crossroads was right. The decisions made for us. We need to move on from this. We can't continue doing what we're doing without their support.
Lovely. So if you've just joined in, connect with Anna and check out the new newsletter that's coming out to give you the background of LinkedIn Local, how it went on, what happened, and what's next. And stay connected with her and learn many more things how to build a community which is meaningful, but at the same time, there's a pie for everyone to get in, and the growth is inevitable. Thank you, Anna. That was really insightful. And LinkedIn Local will always stay in our hearts. There's no doubt that it will go out anywhere, and I'm sure it will develop into something really, really good.
It's interesting. When I did stop, I put together a free course, which I just threw up on Thinkific, and there it stayed. And that's just reached over 700 downloads. And really interestingly, those downloads have actually gone up during the pandemic. So I have a sneaky suspicion that it is going to go gangbusters again. There's just no one to lead it, so someone at LinkedIn needs to do something. But yes, it's it will be a way. I really believe it's a vehicle that people will use to reconnect after this pandemic,
And trust
and
me, Anna.
rebuild their
Yeah.
networks.
No, and what I was saying is, trust me that after LinkedIn Local, there are so many people who have actually known about LinkedIn, who have connected on LinkedIn, and who have actually come on the event, and they created the profile right in the event itself. I mean, LinkedIn has to see those kind of things as well, that the growth has been phenomenal because of the awareness, because of the connect, because of the local strength.
It's and in Australia here we are back offline again. I've held 3 in-person events since our lockdown ended, and I held one last week, and someone came to the event who it's the first time I've seen them since the pandemic, and she said to me, "I'm so glad you organised this again, because I've just logged back into LinkedIn and I've just remembered that all my clients are there, and I had just completely forgotten about it. So thank you." And I'm like, it's those stories that I just feel that LinkedIn don't see. Is that I know the event that I ran, there were at least 6 people in the room, 6 out of 34 who didn't have LinkedIn profiles. By the end of that session, we didn't talk about setting up profiles or anything. We connected over our circles of ask and give, and there was nothing really about LinkedIn. But at the end of it, that was like, I really need to get a profile, don't I? I was like, yes, you do. And so it draws people to the platform. It's such an interesting study, I think, in LinkedIn's branding, because that's very common where I live, is that people see the event and they want to come because they even if they're not actually on LinkedIn, they know it's a professional platform. And I think it's very much seen as it's for everyone. It's like, oh, well, I'm not LinkedIn, but, that's actually relevant to me. This is not about a specific business. This is really just a local group that's meeting. And I feel like it evens the playing field, and that's why people feel that they want to come even if they don't have a profile. So that is a really interesting study, I think, of LinkedIn's brand when people see it that way. And that's the feedback I've heard time and time again in the last 4 years.
Absolutely. So now coming on to the next point and learning from you again, what has been your key learning from your life journey till now?
It's interesting. I think it's putting yourself out there. It's really, if I look at, I did this exercise a couple of months ago where I looked at all of the, what I have seen as my best achievements, my biggest achievements throughout my life. And it was really just putting myself or my work out there, where I just had to push through that fear and do it. It would, like, moving overseas, like starting LinkedIn Local. I had no idea that was what was going to happen. Absolutely none. It was not planned. But when it happened, I ran with it. And it's just a case of, you've just got to go with your gut feeling and just think, well, I could not, or I could just start and see what happens. And I think it's pushing through that courage, putting yourself out there, that's really been the big lesson for me. Is that, hiding behind the screen wasn't necessarily for me. I needed to just go out and push through it. But I think the other key lesson that I really learned, particularly with LinkedIn Local, was about developing leaders. It was really a vehicle that developed leaders. It so much, because people were empowered. I want to bring this to my city. Will you help me? And we were like, yes, we have a mentoring process that's going to help you lead this in your city. And people gained so much from that leadership and that faith that in them that they could do it. And so to me, and I, having managed businesses in my 20s, and I have specifically one business, and I've realized it's that mentality of, oh, well, I want to be irreplaceable. But yet what I should have been doing at that time was making myself fully replaceable. And that's actually what happened with LinkedIn Local. It's just the process we developed didn't need me anymore. And I think that is one of the key big things about my journey thus far, has been the lesson that, in terms of professionally, it's developing new leaders to lead, and how much people need and want that. I think as well, the value of communities, the value of connection. It's what drives me very much so.
Lovely. So, you've given three amazing points, that once you've made a decision, move on. There's no looking back. Second thing that you highlighted with us is train more leaders, grow more leaders, and let others take charge. And the third point that you mentioned was, there will always be a time where you have to take a step down and move on with another journey in your life. Very well said, Anna. Is only because when we keep moving on, we grow. Only when we grow new leaders, we can still grow above that. Because like we all have learned first standard, second standard, third standard in school, and every time we move on, we learn something new. We move friends behind and we grow. And that's life all about. Keep learning, share the learning, and keep moving on. Really, really amazing insights. Brilliant. So now coming on to the book, At the Crossroads of Life. So what is your favorite chapter from the book, At the Crossroads of Life, which you already have it?
Yes. Look, for me, it has to be the LinkedIn Local ones. Because I can't really, it's the LinkedIn Local ones. I love the stories. It just, and particularly the case with you and Mansi, and, the connection that you both had over organizing events, and then of course the orphanage part of that as well, support the social impact side too. That has been really, those stories are the most special. That chapter, definitely.
Lovely. Thank you, Anna. And to share with everyone, just click on the link below, which is going down, and you can get your hands on the book. Of course, due to pandemic, there would be a little delay in deliveries, considering the courier and the availability of that. But thank you, Anna. That was really insightful to talk about the LinkedIn Local journey, your personal journey, your crossroads, your learning about decision making, creating more leaders, and also knowing about your newsletter, which is coming up in the next week. So while we summarize this event and we get to the end of it, I would like to request you to share some personal feedback for all the community, for all our listeners who have joined us today.
I thought my developing leaders was quite a good one. Look, I think that I think the other one I would share is really the power of connection. And specifically, given that we're live on LinkedIn, LinkedIn should be about connection. It's not about numbers. It's not about building followings. It's really about connecting with people, and it's about approaching things, asking questions. connecting, like sending personalized connection requests. People, I think it's always love to know why people reached out to you. Was it something in their profile? Was it something? And so it's really about, it's about that connection, and it's about learning from other people's stories as well. What I really hate seeing on LinkedIn is really automated messages, really unintentional DMs. Like, people are there to connect with others, and share stories, and obviously grow businesses and things like that, but it's really about valuing people as a human being rather than just another number in a cog in the wheel. So that would be my lesson would be around connection.
Lovely, lovely. And your statement reminded me of my first ever keynote, which I did on the power of networking, and so many points to connect to it, and such an amazing conversation, like always. Now, as a ritual, or as a thing, I request everyone and every single listener that currently the world is in pandemic. We are all struggling. We are all facing too many problems. Just fold your hands wherever you are in the world, speak a prayer, say a prayer with your family, and let that go out in the universe. Collective prayers make a lot of difference. Let's heal the world while we sit at our comfort of the home and other frontline people are fighting out. If you cannot go out and fight, do anything, just share your prayers, share your blessings, and let them go out in the universe. Spread positivity. With this, signing off for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will be back soon with one more amazing guest. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Saga. Thanks for having me.